Greetings, one and all, and welcome to whatever this is. I am your host, Daniken Skyfaulker, the Jedi Dropout, and with me, as always,
Axen Cleaver, the Urban Viking. Happy New Year, ladies and gentlemen. Happy 2017. I hope you can join us in saying goodbye to 2016. That son of a bitch.
Good riddance. Yes, Happy New Year.
Libation of the day. We are both currently drinking rum and coke. So it's a dark Jamaican rum. Not exactly what we would normally go for, but very good, very flavorful. I'm smoking Lane Bulk Blend HS-3. I kind of wish they would give it a little more description, but it's a good blend. Currently smoking it out of my General MacArthur cob pipe that I got from Missouri Meerschaum. I'm going to be smoking this the whole time and probably the rest of the day. That is a very large pipe.
It's pretty much an entire corn cob. Fill it hollowed out so that you can smoke out of it.
God, I filled it all the way up.
Yeah, well, what else are you going to do? What rum is this that we're drinking? Is it Applewood, Applegate?
I believe it's Apple.
Apple Estate? Or something?
Yeah, Apple Estate is the name of the rum. It's a dark Jamaican rum. A lot of good flavor in there. We're not typically straight rum drinkers. Sorry for the purists out there. It's got a lot of good flavor, and I think the flavor actually comes through a lot more when it's mixed with something.
Yeah.
Personal preference, by the way.
I was a big rum drinker, probably like earlier in college. And granted, I wasn't drinking good rum back then. I was in college. I didn't know any better. So I was drinking a lot of like Captain Morgan's and that kind of thing. I have had some good rums between now and then. But that actually brings us into our topic of the day. Topic number one, which is whiskey.
Favorite topic, very near and dear to both our hearts. We're not alcoholics, ladies and gentlemen. We are professionals.
I'm an enthusiast. So I was really not much of a drinker earlier on. In high school, I know that people like had keggers and stuff, and I was really into that in high school. I mean, I was hanging out with buddies and playing games and doing other things.
I was getting into fights.
Yeah, I was kind of doing that.
I got to a lot of fights in high school.
Well, we have that in common.
Most were actually consensual. Before you think that I was going around picking fights with little kids or anything like that, no. It was mostly consensual. It's, hey man, you bored? Yeah. You bored? Yeah. Wanna go fight? Sure.
It is a lot of fun. Mine were sanctioned though, because I was big into the martial arts scene back then. So.
But mine were not.
Well, you didn't get caught, so it's fine. But when I got to college, I started, to socialize more, go to parties and that kind of thing. And, of course, I drank my fair share of beer, but...
Quick question. What was the first beer you drank?
The first beer that I ever drank, if we're talking straight what classifies as like a beer, like a malt liquor like you would buy in a grocery store, honest to God, probably Zima was like the first thing that I ever drank when I was, 14 at like a cousin's wedding or something like that.
Miller High Life.
Miller High Life? That's not a bad one.
It's not a bad one to start on. It's not a good beer though. Not a good.
Well,
once you really start getting into beers, and we are currently in the middle of a microbrewery explosion, renaissance, whatever you want to say. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really good beer out there.
And I preface that by saying I do enjoy a good beer now that I'm a little older, and I've had good beer, I've had bad beer.
Natural light.
Oh, good. Oh.
Tastes like a camel that had kidney trouble, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I do enjoy a good beer every now and then when the mood strikes me, but I am a whiskey drinker. I prefer my liquor brown and strong. When I was in college, I started to venture out away from beer, and I think the first liquor that I really fell in love with at the time, and it was a liqueur. I discovered amaretto, and that was the first alcoholic drink that I was like, oh, I can drink this by itself. This is liquid candy. And that's a dangerous drink. That thing will sneak up on you. It does. take too long. You drink about a half a bottle of amaretto and try and stand up. I dare you.
For me, the first drink, like straight up drink I ever had was when I had my first apartment, Jack and Coke.
Yeah.
And I was sold from then on. Me and Jack Daniels were college buddies, and we had a really good run together. Mm-hmm. But I mean, we were talking about this earlier, and like you said, it really feels like I outgrew Jack Daniels.
I'm much the same way. From amaretto, I kind of went into Jack Daniels, Captain Morgan, that kind of thing. And I was a big fan of the rum and Coke drink for a long time, and that transitioned over into Jack and Coke. And I was a big fan of Jack Daniels for a long time, but I kind of got to the point where I felt like I sort of outgrew Jack Daniels. While we were talking about this, it was just one of those, hey, it's New Year's, we got to do a podcast. This is the perfect conversation for a New Year's podcast.
National Hangover Day, as you were calling it.
Yeah, pretty much. So it's a weird thing if you think about it, the whole culture around drinking whiskey. And I'm not talking about drinking whiskey to get drunk. I'm drinking whiskey and appreciating whiskey. The culture behind that is really interesting, and the further you get into it and the more you learn to appreciate certain things,
you'll get into fights with people.
You'll get into debates. Sometimes you will get into fist fights.
Yeah, I mean there are absolute purists out there who believe you put it in a glass and you leave it alone, and that's all you do. You never do anything to it, which for the most part, I'm kind of part of that, but not passionately. I'm not afraid to branch out and try some things. With certain whiskeys, yeah, you put it in a glass, you leave it alone. Really good scotches and stuff like that. Pretty much, if you're paying more than $60 a bottle, appreciate it for what it is. Appreciate it for the art that it is and the effort that everybody put into making that wonderful, wonderful potion and concoction before you. As opposed to,
I mean,
yeah. It is an art form, and it really does take an artist to create the kind of flavor depth and everything. Like, we had the absolute privilege to share a bottle of Lagavulin Scotch. That is something that you put in a glass, you leave it alone.
That is as far as, fellowshipping with a good buddy, just hanging out with your guy friends. No offense, ladies, but male bonding moment. I mean, it does not get better than that. You sit down with a good steak and a glass of Lagavulin.
Rare steak, by the way.
Yeah.
Rare to medium rare is how you eat your red meat. Now, I am a convert to this because growing up I was like, blood, I don't want blood in the stuff that I eat. And then met my current girlfriend, and she really did pull me over to the rare side. And now if it's medium, I'm like, you've ruined a good piece of meat now.
Well, if she didn't do it, I was going to.
Yes.
To wax philosophical, to get a little sappy, I was raised by a man, sir. And you ate your meat rare, and you drank your whiskey neat. So that's that. I'm kind of the same way when it comes to drinking whiskey. I kind of ride that line. If I'm paying $50, I'm not mixing that. That being said, anything that really takes a lot of time, anything that anybody really puts a lot of effort into, I feel like you need to appreciate it. Woodford Reserve, which is a really good bourbon, it has gotten a lot of commercial success here lately, in like the past year or so, which I have not noticed a significant change in their recipe. They still consistently have a really good bourbon. I can go either way on that. Mm-hmm. It's not overly expensive. It is a good enough bourbon that I can drink it neat and appreciate it. But at the same time, if you want to put a splash of ginger ale or something like that in it, I'm not going to flip the table and say, what are you doing?
You're not going to ruin it by that way. Yes, you're going to change it, but you're not going to ruin it.
However, if you are buying, like...
You put Coke in Glenlivet, I'm going to hit you in the face, just saying.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't ruin good Coke with Glenlivet, and you don't ruin good Scotch with Coke. That's just how it is.
Yeah. Lagavulin, $90 a bottle. You're drinking that neat, and you're going to appreciate it.
if you can't appreciate it, you shouldn't have bought it. Give it to a friend who will.
Yes. As far as like going back to that conversation, that's one of the best bonding experiences that I think you and I have ever had. Eating a steak, having good conversation, and drinking amazing scotch. I mean, you put a hot steak in your mouth and you take a sip of that.
You weren't ready, were you?
Man, if that doesn't cool it down and heat it up at the same time, I tell you what.
There was 4 of us sitting around the table, just us guys chatting and having a great time. Did some steaks on the cast iron, which I was always a grill purist until I got into an apartment. I realized I couldn't have a grill, and I started doing them on cast iron, and I'm
much the same way. The first time that I cooked a steak on a cast iron, and I'll tell you, I have made some of my best steaks on a cast iron. I really have. It's not hard. Read up on seasoning your cast iron and how to properly cook and maintain a cast iron skillet. You can make some just absolutely amazing meals. Not just steak, but almost anything.
Almost cornbread in a cast iron. Holy hell.
Growing up a Southern boy, Mama had Mama had a cast iron skillet dedicated specifically for cornbread. That was Mama's cornbread skillet. You don't put anything else in that without feeling the back of her hand.
If you put soap on a cast iron,
what are you doing?
You deserve the beating you get. You deserve every bit of that beating.
That is a punishable offense, and I mean corporal punishment. Like what's wrong with you? Anyway, that's me being old and Southern. So,
what's your go-to whiskey?
My go-to whiskey these days, I kind of go back and forth between Woodford Reserve and Larceny. Larceny and Woodford Reserve are both really good, like second, maybe even third shelf bourbons. I am a big fan of American whiskey. I like the Kentucky Mash. There's just something about that stout, oaky flavor that I really enjoy it. It's a great way to relax. I absolutely love it. Also a big fan of Canadian and Irish whiskeys. Jameson's is probably my go-to Irish whiskey. I've had a couple of others. For the price, nothing matches Jameson as far as value and flavor, quantity, and price. It's just all around a great Irish whiskey.
Jameson has been my go-to for a couple of years now. I have a dedicated decanter for it in the living room. It's always there. It's always full. It's ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
I got guests over, have a little Jameson's. Here you go. Or have a rough day, have a little Jameson's, relax on the couch. Have the cat and the dog nearby.
I think the thing that makes me appreciate Larceny and Woodford, going back to that, is appreciating American whiskey in general, is there's a lot of people that are really passionate about it, and you can find a very high quality small batch bourbon for a very reasonable price. I think that's one of the reasons why I kind of stick to the American whiskeys. If I could afford it, I would probably buy a bottle of Lagavulin every month. It's fantastic. I've been fortunate enough that I've been able to have a couple of different scotches. Not a lot. I wouldn't call myself a connoisseur, but I have never tasted anything that matches the robust and smooth flavor of Lagavulin.
And complexity. Like,
there's a lot going on.
There's
in that little
so
glass.
many things happening in my mouth when I drink that. It's one of those, oh God, I don't know what, there's nothing specific you can focus on. And unless you've actually drank it, if you've drank it, you know what I'm talking about. Where there's just so many things happening that you're like, it's just this amazing mishmash of different flavors and textures even. You get the oakiness, you get the almost peppermint type flavor, you get sharpness from it. It's fantastic.
There's hints of pine, there's so many things going on.
And then at the finish, there's almost this little sweet and bitter combination. It's amazing.
It's one of those things that goes down smooth and then it heats up after you've swallowed it. And it probably sounds gross, it's a unique, very enjoyable experience. I mean, if you're a liker,
it pairs amazing with a good steak.
It absolutely does. It absolutely does. I'm leaning more and more towards larceny as Woodford has gained in popularity. I have not noticed a change in their recipe yet. The consistency still seems to be the same, but I really am a big fan and big supporter of the small batch bourbons. I guess I'm a hipster when it comes to bourbons. I like to support the little guy.
We don't use the H word in here.
Bastards. Ruin everything.
They do. They ruin good things. I'm all for supporting local and small businesses and everything, supporting entrepreneurship, and that's really the proper American attitude of, I'm going to be successful, so I'm going to go and do this, and I'm going to be successful at it. I love the attitude. I love it, and I will support it all the time. I love eating at local restaurants because their business is based on the quality, not the quantity, and that's what I really enjoy.
Where we are, which I'm not going to say where
but we are in the Charleston area.
Yeah. We have some amazing local cuisine.
Oh my god.
We are very fortunate in that regard.
Yes, we are.
And we've actually, we're lucky we've got some really fantastic bars and things around here too. We've got a couple of small distilleries around here that are up and coming too. So
Firefly, actually, I like Firefly, and I didn't think I would.
I didn't think I would either, because it to me seems more like a gimmick, but it's actually pretty good.
There's another local. It's not local. It's in Georgia, but it's Cathead.
Yeah.
Cathead. They've got a honeysuckle vodka, that and some lemonade. Whoo! I could sit on the porch and sip that all night long
on a hot summer day. That's
oh yeah.
Speaking of that, and going back to the microbreweries, we've got some nice, really good up-and-coming microbreweries around here. A couple of them have been around for a while, and a lot of people have heard of Coast.
Yeah.
And they're in the area. Actually have a really good friend of mine who works with them. They've done some impressive stuff. Westbrook is another. They do some good stuff. They make a great IPA.
Yeah. I'm more of a stout guy myself. As this fella down here can attest to, I do like. That was me slapping my stomach. I do like a good stout, and it likes me a little too much.
I'm more of a middle of the road guy. I like ambers and porters. I like a good stout when the mood strikes me, but stouts are pretty heavy, so I don't drink them very often. And I'm actually not a fan of IPAs for the most part. So if I tell you that, hey, these people make a good IPA, the way my brain works, that tells you that's a damn good IPA.
I have found the more I drink the more specialized IPAs, the more I like them. Yeah. The more I drink IPAs,
I know exactly what you mean.
And the more you can sort of taste the different flavors and just appreciate them for what they are. Because, like I said, we do like supporting local businesses and breweries, distilleries. It's wonderful. The sheer number of beers and whiskeys, and there's what is it, Southern Rye?
Yes.
They're an up-and-coming distillery in the area, and they make some fantastic whiskey. Very good whiskey. Good, easy sipping whiskeys.
Yeah, and I've come from a background where my father was from Kentucky, and his father before him, of course, was raised in Kentucky, but before that, Scottish immigrants. So my dad has made whiskey from time to time. His dad made whiskey. That's something that if I ever get the time to, I really would like to try my hand at making whiskey.
By the way, slight disclaimer, check your local laws and regulations. ATF states that 2 gallons a year per adult in the household, I believe it is, and always not for sale but for personal consumption for distilled spirits is the way to go. Again, we aren't going to advocate that you make more, but if you happen to drink more than 2 gallons a year, it happens.
Yeah. Addendum to that, state and local laws in South Carolina for distilling your own whiskey are actually fairly liberal. Like, you can get away with a good bit as long as you're not selling it without a liquor license. And when I say I want to try my hand at making whiskey, I do not plan on selling it unless I think I'm really good at it, at which point I will get a liquor license. I promise.
Jedi Dropout Whiskey coming up.
In like 5 to 6 years. Time permitting. Moving on.
Favorite topic of ours as geeks, nerds, and other.
Well, let me preface this by saying you texted this to me.
I did.
At like 8 o'clock in the morning?
Something like that.
Like a month or two ago?
Because my girlfriend had never seen Judge Dredd. Either one of them. So I was introducing her to him, and I was like, man, then they were talking about another famous science fiction cop, RoboCop.
Side note, RoboCop and Judge Dredd, both fantastic characters.
Absolutely.
And the Judge Dredd comics are a ton of fun to read. If you've never read them,
insanity.
Just pick them up. They're actually really good. They're extremely entertaining.
Some of the older ones you can actually get open source now, so you don't even have to pay for them if you look hard enough for it. And they are. I digress. The next morning I was just kind of thinking, man, RoboCop is such a good movie, and man, Judge Dredd is such. Oh my God! That classic nerd question came to mind: who do you think would win in a fight, Judge Dredd or RoboCop?
Well, I think we've already discussed this, so we're not going to get into it too in depth here. But I think you and I came to the same conclusion. I think we gave that to Judge Dredd.
We did. But let's go through the reasoning process.
Well, Judge Dredd as a character from the comics, well, he was genetically created to be the perfect judge. And why don't you go through what a judge is in the Judge Dredd world, because you are more familiar with that particular comic than I am.
The judges are the pinnacle of law enforcement as a whole system. They assess the crime, they judge guilt or innocence of the crime, and then they execute sentencing. Whether sentencing is ISO cubes or death. Let's be honest, Judge Dredd, it's usually death. And it's kind of interesting because if you follow the mythos of the comics, he has to justify every single death that he commits. Every single execution that he commits is it has to have a reason behind it. And it has to have, been because of broken a law where the penalty is death. To be fair, in Mega City 1, that's not very hard to do.
It's easy to fudge those numbers.
Not necessarily fudge the numbers, because Judge Dredd doesn't fudge numbers. He is black and white. You broke the law, the penalty is death, you're gonna die. Period, end. And that's essentially what a judge is. A judge is the entire justice system all curled up into one guy with one small series of decisions to make. It essentially started out as a jab at our justice system because, well, you do a crime, then they take you into custody, and then they've got to develop a case and prove over however many months that you did do this crime, and then you go before a judge, and then you have to debate in front of the judge, and then the judge determines yes or no, and then if you're found guilty, you get sentenced, and then, you get so many appeals, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Well, this was sort of a jab at that, saying, well, let's streamline the process and say judge, jury, executioner, and law enforcement all in one person.
We're gonna abolish lawyers.
Yeah, no more lawyers, no more appeals, nothing. It's all just boom, 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 there you go. End of story. I can see the appeal of that, but that's a whole lot of responsibility on one dude. And you've got to be right every time. Which is why Judge Dredd was created, because he wasn't born, he was created, as a genetically perfect judge. Not a genetically perfect person, because he sucks as a human being. He is a horrible person.
But he's built to be a judge, which in that universe is the ultimate version of law enforcement. He is a SWAT team, judge, and jury, and executioner all rolled into one, as you said. I mean, he is a one-man
justice system.
And really and truly, at the end of the day, he's a one-man SWAT team.
He's a one-man everything.
Yeah.
Whatever is needed, that's what he does.
And we're not going to break down the entire mythos that goes into the Judge Dredd comics. That would take way too long. But they are great comics. They're really interesting.
Tons of fun. Just tons of fun.
They're very entertaining. And they're actually pretty smart. Like, they're very smart comics.
There's a lot of jabs at the justice system through them, though.
There's
and
a lot of jabs at other things as well. But read them if you get the opportunity. They're very good. All right, moving on from there, which we're going to get back to that in a second. RoboCop, on the other hand, Alex Murphy was a good cop in a very, very bad world. Horrible world.
Pretty much modern day Detroit.
Yeah, they kind of
they are working their way right towards RoboCop.
I wonder if the writers of RoboCop just knew that was on the nose, or if Detroit said, "Well, RoboCop ended up being okay, so we're just going to go that route."
Yeah, because no offense to any of our listeners in Detroit, but God damn it, you guys need to quit shooting each other just for a week. Take a week off. Drink some whiskey and watch a Christmas special. Like, watch Rudolph or something. Just chill. Anything. Barney, I don't care. Just chill for a week. Jesus. But RoboCop is fantastic in that it was the attempt of taking a good cop and making him perfect.
The thing that I love about RoboCop, especially the original movie, and we are talking about the original, the remake, although very entertaining and interesting concept, they took away from the thing that makes RoboCop RoboCop.
They took the humor out of it.
Yeah, the original RoboCop, it's very satirical. It is satire personified. It's very farcical at times, which is what makes it so great. As you said, they make the attempt to take a good cop and make him perfect, because they're trying to get rid of old Detroit and build Delta City. Delta City is supposed to be this new mecca where they're going to stomp out crime, they're going to bring commerce and business and all that stuff back to Detroit to revitalize it. Which sounds good on paper, except for you have a corporation that has essentially purchased the Detroit political system, and they just do whatever the hell they want. And so they're like, we want 24-hour law enforcement. And they approach that in a couple of different ways. If you've not seen the movie, go watch it.
Yeah. First they tried Ed 209. There's a glitch or two.
Just a small programming error.
Yeah.
But they fund the police department, which, looking at society today, you don't necessarily have corporations that run cities, but you do have corporations funding lobbyist groups, and lobbyist groups make huge political implications based on their funding and everything else. So it's not a huge stretch, and it's kind of funny.
Let's say I've seen a lot of law enforcement action on the side of a political agenda as opposed to the side of law enforcement itself as a core. It's scary, it's weird, and it's a little unsettling at times. But it's not nearly what they have in RoboCop's Detroit, but it's not as overt as you would think. You kind of gotta look behind the screen, as it were, and look at the situation as a whole, saying, well, who really benefits? And it's like, well, this is kind of done in a way for political gain. And you're like, that doesn't quite make sense for law enforcement to be used as a political tool, but we're getting into conspiracy theories here, and I'm sure Homeland Security already has my name anyway, so let's move on.
Well, the whole point to that was, it's a funny little trope that I don't even think that they thought of as a trope back then. It was a plot device, and it's just funny that, 30 years later, you're like, oh,
whoops.
we kind of allowed that to happen. But anyway, I digress. Ed 209 failed, so they were like, well, why don't we blend the two? Do we want the cop that barely needs to eat, barely needs to sleep, has the reflexes to react faster than any other cop can, and the programming and arsenal to do so accordingly. With RoboCop, you have basically a walking riot squad. And with Judge Dredd, you have a one-man SWAT team. So for us, it was a really interesting topic to talk about because we're both interested in those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Guns, tactics, all that fun
Guns,
stuff.
Tactics, how law enforcement would handle a particular situation. And it really does end up a very interesting thing because how would Judge Dredd and RoboCop view each other?
Because in some ways, they're very similar. Like, Judge Dredd, he has to basically, once a week or once a day, he has to enter his little ISO chamber to recharge or whatever it is.
It's usually once a day, but it usually ends up once every couple of days.
It's kind of funny. If you think about Captain America as a police officer and you take away that human side almost completely, then you kind of end up with Judge Dredd. Because he is he's almost a perfect human, is he not? I mean, you've read a lot more comics than I have.
Yeah, physically he is the most efficient that he can be. That's the best way to put it, I think. He's a more efficient person. He utilizes every nutrient, every calorie is utilized in a very specific and efficient way, as opposed to a normal human being where there's a lot of waste, the laws of thermodynamics thing, where energy cannot be created or destroyed, only converted to another form, and then when it's converted to another form, some energy is always lost as heat, and essentially he operates on almost a perfect exchange of energy, which is technically impossible. Well, physically impossible. But, I digress.
Yeah.
I'm very smart for a Viking, apparently.
Smartest Viking I've ever met. I'll say that.
Oh!
Yeah, so RoboCop and Judge Dredd are very similar in that regard. They essentially work in a very concentrated manner. I mean, they require minimal sleep. They're both on different sides of the spectrum. They're designed to react quickly and make split-second decisions. But the key difference is you have RoboCop, who's a walking riot squad, because he's essentially a tank. He's not very fast, but he's pretty much a bullet sponge.
He can take a obscene amount of punishment.
And if you don't believe us, watch the RoboCop versus Terminator episode of Death Battle. I love the guys at Death Battle. I don't always agree with their outcome because...
Wolverine versus Raiden.
They do incredible research.
Yes, they do. Which, by the way, we haven't done any research. Just so you know, this is strictly an opinionated show where this is based on what we have read in the past. This is not, let's look everything up about 5 minutes before the show. It's two guys bitching. So deal with it.
We're explaining what we know based on what we've read and what we already know. We're not, like you said, we're not doing the research. So this is based purely on the knowledge that we already have. The research that they do incredible research. I just sometimes wonder, how do they facilitate their research process? Like the source material that they use for their research. You can think whatever you want about that. I love the guys over there at Screw Attack at Death Battle. They do a great job. It's one of my favorite shows on the web. They're really entertaining. They're super smart. Keep doing what they're doing. Big fan of it.
Yeah, full support.
Anyway, but going back to that, RoboCop can take an obscene amount of punishment. Whereas Judge Dredd, he's got a lot of tools at his disposal, but ultimately he is a minimalist. He's like a one-man SWAT team. He has what he has, and he has to make it work for him.
Now, he does have the lawgiver, which is the ultimate multi-tool of a gun.
I want one so bad.
Which does give him
not as much as I want a lightsaber, but I want one.
It gives him a certain level of flexibility that RoboCop actually doesn't have.
RoboCop has a pretty substantial arsenal, however, he does not always have it readily available.
Right, whereas Judge Dredd is able to change up tactics on the fly and adjust to the situation at hand a lot more readily than RoboCop is, which I think ultimately that flexibility gives Judge Dredd the edge.
And as we talked about it before, I agreed with that. Number one, Judge Dredd is faster. He's more maneuverable. His choice of vehicle provides him with some extra options. If we're basing it on the comic vehicles that he has available. But also, the Lawgiver is a little bit of a trump card in a way. It's part of his normal attire. It's part of his daily issue. But the fact that the Lawgiver gives him so many options, I think at the very least, if it's not going to take RoboCop out, it is going to disable him.
Yeah, but because they've got the hot shot, which will melt through just about anything. And while we know RoboCop does have a very substantial ability to take punishment, the armor can be melted away. Then there's the piercing shot, which will just go through damn near anything.
And we've seen that RoboCop is vulnerable to armor-piercing rounds.
Yes. Judge Dredd is an expert marksman. Beyond what is humanly possible, he is an expert marksman. And this is all done with a handgun. Well, the Lawgiver is a little bit more than just a handgun, but for ballistics purposes, it is technically a handgun.
Yeah.
And RoboCop is very accurate. His computer systems are always on point. However, we've already shown, even in the first RoboCop movie, they are subject to disruption.
They are subject to disruption. I would argue that RoboCop day to day has more firepower at his disposal, but it's firepower for firepower's sake.
Right.
It's not multiple variations. It's basically, I got a whole lot of bullets and I'm going to shoot at you really fast and very accurately.
Whereas Judge Dredd has the ability to tailor his firepower to the situation with any given situation. Everything from high explosive to grenade to the hot shot, the piercing shot, standard ammunition, double shot. I mean, the list goes on. And it gives him so much more versatility combined with his increased mobility and similar stamina to RoboCop.
Yeah.
That while he can't take the damage RoboCop can, he can take more punishment than your average human being, and we believe he has the ability to outmaneuver RoboCop, whereas RoboCop has brute force method to just about everything, where not everything, but
he's your typical like RPG tank. He goes in there, he absorbs a lot of damage, and he deals out a ton of damage.
Right. The whole point is he can deal more damage than he takes, and he can take a ton. But I think as far as tactics and again, we're not including the new movie because it really doesn't capture the spirit of RoboCop. A, as we grew up with, and B, as we've all come to know and love him, and it just really kind of. However, the 2005 Judge Dredd did a phenomenal job of capturing the proper character of Judge Dredd.
Oh, hands down. I mean, it's as close as we're going to get to a 100% comic accurate Judge Dredd movie. Said it before, I love the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd movie. It's awful as a Judge Dredd movie.
It is so much
fun.
But it
is so much fun.
It is a great movie. Sitting down with some friends and, you know, some shots, a good whiskey, like we were talking about it earlier. Just sit down and just laugh your ass off to it. It is wonderful. It is a great movie. I cannot emphasize that enough.
It is, I think, my favorite bad movie. It's the best bad movie I've ever seen.
Well, we are running a little long on time here, and apologize for that, but these are just two subjects we are very enthusiastic about: whiskey and nerd matchups.
Yep. And we just wanted to do something fun. We're bringing in a new year. We're hoping that this new year will be better than this last year. And so we just wanted to take a second and, you know, share it with you guys and have a fun time talking about very lighthearted stuff.
Have a happy 2017. We look forward to hearing from you in the comments below. Like I said,
let us know what you think. Do you think we're right that Judge Dredd is better suited to take that situation? Do you think RoboCop wins? I'd like to hear what you think.
If you have any subjects that you want us to cover, by all means, tell us. We have a billion things that we can talk about. Like I said, We're just a couple of guys bitching on the internet, really.
Yeah.
But
seeing if anybody even cares to listen.
If you want to talk to us, if you want to let us know, if you have a subject you want us to talk about, leave a comment below. We will do our best to get to it.
And as always, thanks for listening in. Have a safe and happy time until our next episode.
If you can't be good, be safe. If you can't be safe, don't get caught. Have a good day.
We'll see you again.